So this is a Honda NTV 650 Revere. It's a 1990 model, and it's quite an unusual bike really in this part of the world in Australia. A little bit more common in Europe and in the UK. In the US, I believe they were sold as the Honda Hawk at one point. So it's a 650cc V-twin. It's a 52 degree V, not a 90. So that's an interesting engineering point with the bike. Now, in the part of this video that we were riding out on the road, you might have heard a bit of a rattle. I tried to get this thing to rattle a little bit. What I actually think's wrong with it is that the cam chains have become stretched over time, and the guides themselves that tension them, they're probably quite worn out. So you can really hear this thing rattle as it rides along. This is quite an unusual bike. I've never actually seen one in the flesh till now. I've seen the later model, which is the NTV 700 Duville. This bike evolved from a naked standard into a V-twin tourer, and they're quite an effective tourer, I'm told. You've seen just in that video, barely revving this thing. It goes straight up to 80 kilometres an hour and holds that quite well. The beauty of a V-twin, of course, is that it has usually quite a flat torque curve. So it's tractable from down low and keeps going right up just about to redline. They're not particularly fast, but very comfortable to ride. Not so dependent on gear changes. When we look at our MC19, for example, that's a little 4-cylinder that redlines at 18,000 revs, and you've got to keep that thing on the boil. It doesn't climb up onto the cam, so to speak, until about 9 or 10,000 revs. Its power starts to drop after 16,000, so you've got to keep it within, say, 10 and 16,000 revs if you ever really want to move around. The things will die in the butt on roundabouts. You've got to back change to the right gear on a roundabout, or else you're just going to end up standing there holding the bag, so to speak. You will be under the cam and you won't be able to pull out quickly. And that can be really, how can I put it, inconvenient. Say when some tool runs through the roundabout and doesn't see you, or a truck fails to stop in time, you need to be able to keep your machine in a position where if you need to get out of the way of something fast, you can do so. And that's the beauty of a V-twin, is that they're not particularly high performance. They're often more the equivalent of a tractor rather than a racing machine. Very tractable. You can feel that torque push you along. In the video there, you would have noticed that I wasn't revving it particularly hard. The point is though that actually the whatever's wrong with this engine, and I'm only assuming cam chains, it's actually preventing it from revving cleanly, and when you do rev it, you regret it. It makes such an awful noise that you don't want to hear it, and you change gear really quickly. The thing with riding something that's defective, if something lets go and you're riding along, it can cause an accident, so it's not something you really want to get involved in. So this is going to be my personal ride, but we need to tidy it up a bit first. I guess the very first thing we need to do is find out what's wrong with this engine. There's a few other things that we need to tidy up along the way. The handlebars, they really are not good, to say the least. Somebody has changed the standard clip-ons, which look like this, by the way. They've changed them to this, what they call superbike handlebars, so I'm not really sure what's so super about them. So it's an adapter that you can see there that goes from the clip-on to a set of standard bars. But you know, when you compare the original clip-ons to this replacement bar, your hand position is already very similar. But you've gone from driving, you know, the fulcrum point has changed to here from over the fork. And the result of that is that the bike doesn't feel stable. It really feels quite wobbly, to be honest. Being a bit of a fan of restoring things back to what they were, I would, as a matter of course, get rid of the Superbike handlebars. We need to do something about the dashboard as well. I'm not having much luck finding a dash. I don't know why it was changed from the standard dash to this cheap little Chinese speedometer. The person I bought it off thought that I was a sucker, and I didn't set him straight on it. Though when we got down to negotiating price, he probably started to realise that I was nowhere near as dumb as I was. Well, I wouldn't say I was pretending to be dumb. He was telling me tales and I was just agreeing with him, you know, which is good for people who are not particularly confrontational. So he didn't tell me anything. He wasn't particularly forthcoming about what had actually happened with all of this. These bars, they were set down quite low. They've dented the tank on both sides, which is just really peachy. Particularly when finding any part for this bike is starting to prove to be a little bit tricky. Some things will be easier to get than others. Body parts are going to be a problem. These clip-ons that I'm going to step back to the original bars with very shortly, they actually came from Germany. So this is a bike that I'm actually sourcing parts from all around the world to put it back into shape. Dashboards, being what they are a little bit tricky, because some bikes, just the shape of them, they tend to be damaged quite easily. And I'm finding that with this bike is that even the European ones, I can get one, it's for $400 and it's held together with duct tape. So the guy's pretty confident he's going to find a buyer with it advertised for $400. It's actually 200 and something euro. I'm not really sure what I just convert. I don't try and talk euro. I talk AUD because that's what I'm paying in. So this we might end up having to use some sort of aftermarket dash, but definitely we're going to step up from this. Because I'm a little bit older, I do need glasses for reading, I'm going to admit it. I still ride without glasses. I can't ride with my reading glasses on. And that makes it inconvenient when I've got small numbers on a tiny little speedometer like that. I can't see that, but I do need to know how fast I'm travelling. Other than that though, you can see the bike's in pretty good state. I'm confident what will happen here is we'll do a bit of exploratory surgery on the engine and we'll find that it needs to come out. So we'll do that. We'll probably check things like wheel bearings, brake pads. The difference between this and our MC19 is the MC19, it was registered, it was dropped, it changed owners. I'm going to speculate the next owner in the line was an absolute polvo. He couldn't afford to register it or fix it. It went and changed hands again to the guy I bought it off, and he probably just flipped it. He probably added a couple of $100 to it and then moved it on. You know, it came from Penrith. Those who know Sydney at all know that Penrith's a bit of a mixed bag. But anyway, that's the MC19 story, not this thing's story. One thing I really like about this, which I find... No, I'm not talking about the super duct tape job on the side cover. What I'm talking about is this awesome one-sided swing arm and its shaft drive. So it was actually the second bike that has this characteristic that Honda ever made. The first one was the VFR 750. Now the VFR has evolved. It's now more of a sports tourer. When they first came out, they were very much the racing bike, so to speak. And you know, this is a lovely feature for somebody who just has adjusted enough chains in his life. We'll probably have to pull that apart, because from what I've established, this bike has about 102,000 kilometres on it, and I don't think any of the previous owners were particularly meticulous about looking after it. There was the superbike conversion. This seat is not the original, that's been redone. That's a little bit of a comfort thing though. I mean, if you've ever had a bike with a ripped seat, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think with just a little bit of work, I'm going to end up with a really good, solid ride. Shame once again about those dents in those tanks too, because the paint is quite good on it. Now you might recall that I said that body parts were going to be hard, but the engine parts not so much. The engine on this thing is the same one that is used in the XLV 650, actually XL650V I believe it is, which is pretty cool because it means that there's a more recent series of bikes that still have parts available. So I've already had a little bit of a look at what Honda has to offer, and I can actually get a lot of the hard parts for this engine from Honda, original, admittedly slightly old stock. So getting this thing going to the point where it's reliable again shouldn't be too hard. But I think before we sink the ship, we need to sight these cam chains. We need to look at them and see what we can learn from them. There's another chain in there, probably a 52-degree V, probably has a balance shaft, and that is possibly chain driven or gear driven. We'll find out the hard way if we have to. So let's start another journey.